Stand by. 238.
Hello and welcome back to the channel. Today, I'm doing a complete breakdown of all 8 Steel Challenge stages, providing you with insight on what to expect and some tips on effective strategy. We'll also cover how scoring works as well as how to determine your classification. If you recall from my previous video, how to get started in USPSA and Steel Challenge, there are 8 standardized stages that you will see at any given match. If you haven't seen that video yet, I highly recommend you go check it out. I'll put a link in the description, since it gives a broad overview of both Steel Challenge and USPSA. Every stage in Steel Challenge has 5 targets, and your goal is to engage all 5 targets as quickly as you can, finishing on the stop plate. The stop plate is typically marked with a red plate or a red post to make it obvious that it is the last plate you must shoot during the stage. Failure to do so will result in a penalty. Every match you go to will have the same standardized plate sizes, the same height of posts, and the targets will be at the same distance. This is to ensure continuity across the sport. Because of this standardization, the sport has scores based on aggregate times from the best shooters in the country. These are known as the peak times. Now, the peak times are not the world record for any given stage. Those numbers are much more impressive. Rather, the peak time is determined by the governing board of the sport using the scores from shooters from across the country. Those times are updated periodically and may now be different than what you're seeing in this video. To see the most up-to-date peak times, go to the Steel Challenge Shooters Association website. Remember, each stage is shot with 5 consecutive strings, and the best 4 out of 5 strings will determine your score for the stage. This means on every stage, one of your scores is what we call a throwaway and will not be used to determine your total score for this stage. Let's start by looking at the different classifications within the sport of Steel Challenge. Here, you see all the classifications listed with the corresponding minimum percentage needed to reach that class. Classes are determined based on a percentage of the peak time, which is set at 100%. Now let's do some simple math so it becomes abundantly clear what I mean. Let's take a stage like Smoke and Hope and look at the peak time for Carry Optics Division. We see a peak time of 10 seconds. Let's say you complete all 5 strings and your 4 best times combined total 14 seconds. Now divide 10 by 14, you get 0.71, or 71%. Looking at our classification chart, we can see that 60% is the minimum score for B class, while 75% is the minimum score for A class, putting us comfortably in the B class division at 71%. Now, you might have noticed the peak times are different for each division. This is because of the different types of gear and how it affects your performance. Some divisions start from the low ready, while others start from the holster, and this will drastically impact the time it takes for you to get your sights on target. If you become an official USPSA member, your scores from each match will be tracked on the Steel Challenge website. This is done by taking the total sum of your best times and then dividing them against the total sum of the peak times for those stages. You will need to have performed 6 of the 8 stages initially to receive a classification. Now that we've gotten through the technical stuff, let's move on to strategy. Let me start out by saying that each stage requires consideration on how you would like to run it. Some stages have a wide variety of different ways you can approach, while others, like 5 to go, really only have one way you can approach it. Let's just go straight down the list and we'll start with 5 to go. Many people consider 5 to go to be one of the more difficult stages. The reason for this is because 4 of the 5 targets are the smallest target that you will see in Steel Challenge, a 10-inch plate. These 10-inch plates are staggered in a diagonal fashion, with the first plate being 10 yards ahead of the firing line and the last plate being 18 yards ahead of the firing line. Now, one important thing to consider on how you're going to perform this stage is going to be economy of movement. It would not be wise to shoot target 1, then target 3, then target 2, then target 4, and then the stop plate. This is because transitioning back and forth between these targets would increase the overall time it takes you to perform the stage. So in this particular stage, it really only makes sense to shoot the targets in order from left to right. Some people may try to shoot the targets from right to left, but the far transition from target 1 to the stop plate can be tough to master. Looking at our list of peak times, you can see that 5 to go has one of the more generous peak times of all the stages. If we take 13 seconds, which is the peak time, and divided by 4, you can see that you would need your 4 best strings to each be 3.25 seconds in total time from holster to stop plate. This is 0.65 seconds per plate, and that's not even considering how long it takes you to draw from the holster. If we assume that you have a 1.5 second draw, that only leaves you 1.75 seconds to engage each target. Divide that by 4, and you have 0.43 seconds to engage each target. That's less than half of a second per target, and for a lot of us, shooting a 10-inch plate at 18 yards in less than 1/2 of a second can be pretty difficult. So don't assume that you'll get 100% peak time on this stage your first try. It may take you years to reach that time, so set your goals appropriately based on your scores from your first match. I went back and looked at my scores from my first match in May of 2022. That day, I shot 5 to go in a total time of 19.15 seconds. 13 seconds divided by 19.15 gives us a percentage of 67, which means I started in B class. My current best time on 5 to go is 13.40 seconds. I was already a decent shooter to have started in B class. Whatever scores you get in your first match, be happy with it because the only way to go from here is up. My personal take is that 5 to go really requires you to have good technique when taking each shot. It also takes patience because it's easy to want to take a shot as soon as your sights land on target. But the plates are small, and taking a hasty shot can cause you to miss. And misses, although they aren't penalized, are really going to eat up a lot of time. Next, we have Showdown. Showdown is one of those stages where the order in which you want to engage each target can vary greatly from shooter to shooter because of its trapezoid shape. Starting on any one of the 4 targets seems like a reasonable decision. However, you'll also notice that instead of 1 shooter's box, you have 2. This is because on Showdown, 2 out of your 3 strings will be shot from 1 box, and the 3 remaining strings must be shot from the other box. Whether you do your first 3 strings in the box to the left or right doesn't really matter, but once you're in the shooter's box, you will notice that the angle at which the targets are displayed is different. Here is my view of the targets from the shooter's box on the left, and here is my view of the targets from the shooter's box on the right. You can see that the angle will change how you perform this stage. Some people will choose to shoot the targets in the same order from both boxes, while other shooters will choose to shoot from right to left or left to right, which can change which target you first engage. If I choose to shoot left to right, you'll see that from the shooter's box on the left, I will engage target 1 first. But when I move to the shooter's box on the right, the target which is most left from my perception is now target number 2, the 10-inch plate. Also, if I didn't mention this before, all of the plates on the stages are numbered 1 through 4, going from left to right regardless of how close or far the target is. So when I say target 1, I always mean the target that is furthest left on the stage. I've also seen shooters choose to shoot the larger targets first. So maybe their order is target 1, target 4, then target 3, target 2, then stop plate. My suggestion is to choose a plan for your first time and stick with that plan through all 5 strings of the stage. Some of my worst performances were when halfway through the stage I decided my plan wasn't working and I chose to try something different for the rest of the stage. Next, we have my favorite stage, Smoke and Hope. Smoke and Hope is an easy favorite because you're given the largest target in steel challenge 4 times at a very close distance, with the closest target being 7 yards and the farthest target being 14 yards, that target being the stop plate. I will typically see people run this stage either in the order of 1, 2, 3, 4 stop, or 1, 2, 4, 3 stop, or a variation of that. My preferred order is 4, 3, 1, 2 stop. Because of the distance of the targets, this stage is very fast. I typically point shoot the first 2 targets I engage, and then by the time I've reached the 3rd or 4th target, I'm now aiming through the optic of my weapon. And it's also important here to take extra focus not to drive past the stop plate. Next up, we have Outer Limits. This is another interesting stage because it's the only stage that incorporates movement under time. In Outer Limits, you see that there are 3 shooting boxes. Depending on whether you're right or left-handed, your starting position will differ. As a right-handed shooter, you'll start in the leftmost shooter's box, and upon the start signal, engage the first 2 corresponding targets on the left side. While the clock is ticking, you'll swiftly transition to the center shooter's box and take aim at targets 3 or 4 before engaging the stop plate. If you're left-handed, your starting point will be the right shooter's box. From there, you'll engage the targets on the right side, and smoothly transition to the center shooter's box to tackle the remaining targets. It's worth noting that the targets located at the rear are situated 35 yards away from the firing line. Furthermore, it's important to know that unlike the other stages, this one only has 4 total strings, with your best 3 counting towards your final score. If you're just starting out in practical pistol competition, this stage is an excellent introduction to movement mechanics involved in practical shooting. It's important to economize your movement from the box that you start in to the box that you finish in, making sure that you get the gun up with sights on target quickly once re-entering the shooter's box. If you notice that you're having trouble reacquiring sights on target, that means you need to work on ensuring light, smooth footwork on your deceleration into the shooting position. Moving right along, next we have Accelerator. This is one of those tricky stages where I haven't been able to discern a preferable sequence to engage targets. I have tried starting on the large rectangle target in the rear, target number 4, and going 4-3-1-2 stop, and I've also tried going 1-2-4-3 stop, and I haven't determined if I prefer one over the other. If you decide to engage target 4 first, you'll be able to engage target 2 very quickly before engaging the stop plate, which is a plus. However, it may take you a little longer to get your first shot off because the distance of target 4 is 20 yards from the firing line. Also, if you start on target 1 and engage target 2, then target 4, you can engage these targets in fairly quick succession. However, what I typically see is someone will engage target 3, miss, and then engage and hit the stop plate before realizing they've missed target 3, causing a penalty. This is definitely a stage that you should run in different variations until you find something that you feel works for you, and then focus on perfecting that. I still haven't found what works for me. I recently tried going left to right, and I may stick with that for a while to see if my scores improve. Next up is Pendulum. This stage is similar to 5 to Go in that we only have the smaller plates, 3 12-inch plates and 2 10-inch plates. This stage takes careful precision under speed to master. I personally like to engage target 1, target 2, transition to target 4, then 3, then the stop plate. The reason I do this is because the long transition across from target 2 can cause you to overshoot the target. I feel that moving from a 10-inch plate to the larger 12-inch plate helps reduce the possibility that I will overshoot and miss. I also like the shorter distance from target 3 to the stop plate. Now we're on to speed option. This is another long stage with the stop plate being in the back at 35 yards. Although the targets are widely spread out and range from 8 yards to 35 yards, I find this stage to be easier than it looks. And I typically will start on the right and engage target 4, then 3, then target 1, then 2, and then the stop plate. What's tricky about the stop plate being so far away is that it takes a moment for the sound to travel to confirm you've hit the plate. And if you miss, the time it takes to register the miss and engage the stop plate again will really cost you. So really take focus when engaging the stop plate to avoid that happening to you. And finally, the 8th stage we have is Roundabout, aptly named because of the layout of the targets. Typically, people will shoot this in a round-the-horn fashion. There is a trick to this stage. Depending on where you stand in the shooter's box, the angle of the targets will change, and standing in the upper left corner of the shooter's box will bring target 2 and target 1 more in alignment, which allows me to shoot target 4, target 3, target 1, target 2, stop plate. And you'll see in this string that I'm able to engage target 1, target 2, and the stop plate very quickly. That being said, you would think with the targets being larger 12-inch plates with a maximum distance of 15 yards, this would be an easy stage. But at the time of this recording, this stage is what's holding me back from GM. It's the only stage that I don't have a GM or Masterclass run in Carry Optics, so don't let the looks fool you. Now that we've gone over all 8 stages and covered classifications, I want to leave you with some general advice if you're going to shoot your first Steel Challenge match. One thing I see new shooters do a lot, and I was also a victim of this myself, is getting very tense when shooting in an attempt to go fast. What ends up happening typically is that this just leads to more misses, and misses really add up in time. The best runs I've had are when I'm not focused on time and I'm shooting for fun. I'm calm, I'm relaxed, and I'm more focused on getting my hits than I am speed. And lastly, make sure you're having fun. Steel Challenge is such a mental sport. You have 5 strings every stage, and there's plenty of time to psych yourself out. There is a lot of downtime between strings and between stages. In those moments, there's a very large window of opportunity for you to get in your own head and to overanalyze your plan, thinking about all the mistakes that you're going to make or could make, and ultimately, that's going to be a performance destroyer. It's essential that you put energy into the mental discipline that comes from shooting at the highest possible speed in the most accurate way. One last thing, guys. If you enjoyed this video and you found it helpful, please like and subscribe. Leave a comment letting me know what else you would like to see in the form of educational practical shooting videos. I really enjoy making these videos. They take a lot of time to make because I want to make sure that the information I'm providing is very clear and succinct. But if there's a topic that you feel hasn't been covered extensively or not clearly enough in one of my videos, please leave a comment letting me know. Thanks, and I'll see you guys next time.